Parents in Ontario had been waiting for months. The province has now signed a childcare deal with the feds, one that promises to slash childcare to $10 a day by September 2025. Ontario is the last province to ink a deal with Ottawa as part of Justin Trudeau's $30 billion national childcare program. So, what does this mean for parents, many of whom have been feeling the financial strain for years now? Joining us to talk details tonight is Morna Ballantyne, Executive Director of Childcare Now, Bronwyn Alsop from the Ontario Families Coalition, and Gordon Cleveland is Associate Professor Emeritus of Economics at the University of Toronto. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Carolyn, we'll begin with you. Raising a child in this province, it's certainly not cheap. Childcare costs are some of the most expensive in the country. It's finally happened. Ontario has a childcare deal with the feds. Now we'll start with getting your reaction to this. Carolyn, can you hear us? Okay, we're not sure that Carolyn can hear us. So, Bronwyn, we will ask you the same question. I know you're an early childhood educator. You're also a mother. And you've told me about having to stay home longer than you wanted to after having your first child because the childcare fees, are so expensive in this country. What's on your mind tonight? How are you reacting to this deal?
As a parent and early childhood educator, I'm thrilled. I think this is definitely long overdue, and I love to see that both parties are collaborating together and thinking of our children and our future generation first and how this has affected families for years. So I'm very pleased because as an early childhood educator myself, I always wanted to have my daughter, my firstborn, in a program definitely for her mental health and her development and growth, but we could not afford it. And being an ECE, it was not something that really would make sense financially. Until my mother was really, we had no choice, but she was dying. And for that time, I had to be with her all the time. And so immediately we took that and put her in daycare so she wouldn't be with me in the hospital all the time. And I was about to give birth to my second child. So really that financial strain on us was intense and real. And the money that we lost putting all of that into the daycare is something that definitely haunts us now still. So I really look forward to the future for families not having that strain, where they could have had their kids in the daycare before and not been in that intense struggle where they had to, and it affected them financially. It's very important for all families from all financial backgrounds to have daycare.
Right. So it sounds like you're pretty relieved about this. Morna, my apologies to you. The question was for you. And the question is, raising a child in this province, as we know, is not cheap. We've talked about childcare costs being so expensive in this country. What did you make of this significant deal between the province and the feds?
Well, first of all, incredibly excited that Ontario is finally going to join this Canada-wide system of early learning and childcare. Wonderful, and it means now that Ontario will benefit from a very big share of the money that the federal government set aside in the 2021 federal budget to build a system. And absolutely one of the immediate, positive impacts of this agreement effects will be reductions in parent fees. But of course, one of the things we have to think about is that when the costs go down, which is a really good thing, the percentage of families and children who can access licensed childcare, unfortunately, they still represent the minority. And so this agreement also has to be used to really expand licensed childcare so that availability is there for everybody who wants it.
Yeah, availability is crucial.
Yes.
We'll talk more about childcare spaces in a moment, but next we'll come to you, Professor. We know the high cost of childcare, especially in a pandemic, has impacted so many parents. How do you think that's held women back from being able to pursue their careers, and what does that mean for the economy?
Historically, whether in the pandemic or not, it's certainly been true that the high cost of childcare has been a really important barrier to mothers' labor force participation. And so we anticipate there'll be very strong impacts, as there were in Quebec, if there are enough spaces. And that's a big if. So I guess we're going to get to discuss that. But that's really the issue in this agreement. Is there enough in it to expand the workforce, but also expand the number of spaces quickly enough so that we get the benefits that you can get from universal childcare.
Okay, so let's pick up on that, the spaces issue here. Bronwyn, $10 a day childcare sounds great. I'm sure every parent is thrilled about this, but we can't do much with that if there isn't enough childcare space. The province does say it'll create 86,000 childcare spaces over the next 5 years, but how big an issue is space in this province?
It's definitely a huge issue, and I think that definitely it's something that has to be, again, investigated and work collaboratively with all partners to get that key information in order to know how to do this properly. We have a history of not collaborating together to bring everyone at the table to make sure that these plans roll out successfully, to do the appropriate research. So the spacing is definitely a huge issue, and we need to make sure that it follows through and it happens properly. So yes, if you just lower the fees and you don't have the spaces, then really that's not doing anything long-term gain at the end. So I really hope to see a full plan and how this plays out to make sure it happens properly for all families and for everyone so it can work properly.
Okay, Professor Cleveland, I want to talk to you about details here. This agreement is valued at $13.2 billion over 6 years, not 5 like other provinces and territories are getting. We're getting 6 years here. The Premier has negotiated an additional year of funding. Now, if you ask Doug Ford, he'll probably tell you that this is a really good thing for Ontario, that it means another $2.9 billion. That's what he said. Ontario was the last to sign on, though, and we know many parents in the province have been waiting for this announcement. Do you think this was worth the wait?
No, it wasn't worth the wait, partly because Ontario would have gotten an additional $2.9 billion anyway. The federal government agreed that with this was going to be continuing funding, and that's the amount of money that would be in the budget for Ontario for the 6th year, whether it bargained it or not. So that's an issue. But the bigger issue is that we lost a year of expanding spaces and of recruiting staff and getting the wages up. So those are now going to be very tight bottlenecks, and we're trying to do it very, very quickly. We needed to have had that extra year, but now we've lost it.
Yeah, time is of the essence here for sure. Okay, let's talk about the opposition. It's been pushing the Ford government to sign this deal for months now. Former Liberal Premier Kathleen Wynne today on Twitter saying that just at the last minute, right before the election, Doug Ford signed a deal that could have been signed months ago, leaving parents in limbo. I want to pick up on that reaction from the opposition today. Here's what Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca had to say.
Today was an epic failure from Doug Ford and from the Ford Conservatives, who once again made it crystal clear they don't support childcare, they don't support the families who need childcare, who need financial relief, and frankly, they don't support the idea that a rock-solid, universal licensed childcare system sets our kids up for success in their earliest years. And so this was a horribly missed opportunity by Doug Ford and the Ford Conservatives. And happy to take your questions, but it's deeply disappointing that people in Ontario had to wait to be last in line to get nothing really for that kind of delay.
Okay, so Stephen Del Duca talking about that delay. Morna, do you agree with the opposition's position here? Should parents have been waiting this long?
Absolutely not. There is nothing in this agreement that could not have been achieved 10 months ago. And to build, pick up on what Gordon said, is that Ontario has lost a lot of time, with respect to trying to get more licensed childcare in place. But also we have to keep in mind that by waiting this long, parents have also been denied fee reductions that could have come much sooner. So in a number of other jurisdictions where governments moved quickly and signed agreements, there are many families that are now enjoying even $10 a day childcare, and many others who saw their fees reduced by 25% or 50% retroactive to January 1st. So there really was nothing gained for Ontario through this wait period of waiting until the last minute, and also there was a lot lost.
So you say there was nothing gained here. The Premier would say, well, we gained 6 years of this deal, not 5. What do you say to that, Morna? How do you respond?
Well, the agreement is not a 6-year agreement. The expansion targets have to be met in 2025, and the fee reductions, the $10 a day, has to be met within 4 years, not 5 years. So the 6th year is all that is. I think was, as Gordon has already said, the federal budget for 2021 allocated ongoing annual funding for early learning and childcare beyond 25-26. It allocated $9.2 billion. So what the Ford government is doing is taking credit for money that it would have received anyway. And who knows? 5 years, there actually might be more than $9.2 billion allocated by the federal government. And so if the Ontario government really did seal a deal for its share of $9.2 billion, it might have even ended up losing some money. Who knows what will happen in 5 years.
Okay, Bronwyn, I want to give you a chance to weigh in here. And I also want to talk to you about the timing, because it is significant here. Parents will start receiving rebate checks retroactive to this Friday in May. That is weeks before a provincial election. What do you make of the timing here?
I completely agree. This is all political, and this is what I'm always disgusted with as a parent and an advocate, as an educator, and you've seen it now across with COVID through a consistent behavior. Actions happen in our government when it helps them politically. So again, this was a consistent thing with schools, with the delays in opening and closing. Again, you're seeing this now. Whatever helps them politically is the last minute. And I don't support that. And I want things to be thought through, not how it helps their political future as leaders, but how it truly look into those children and those daycares. Go in there yourself. Understand the system that you are making these decisions for. Reach out to the people that you should have been at that table for years to discuss these things. You should have already had this answer many, many years ago. It's been in the works for years and years. And I think there should be some accountability to acknowledge that it took way too long to get here today, and that this is the problem that we need to look going forward, that it does not always restrict us to have these delays just to help us politically so we can win an election. So I personally, I am thrilled for this for parents, but from the political angle, this is the same cycle, and we're going to see this in another, event and a different issue, and it's going to be too late. So I hope they learn their lesson to not have this again, but we'll see.
Okay.
It's politics.
We will see. Bronwyn Alsop, Morna Ballantyne, and Professor Gordon Cleveland, thank you all for your time and your perspective tonight. We appreciate your time.